Shh. Hear that? Big waves are calling. Dive into refreshment with Kona Big Wave. Tropical flavor and the taste of aloha in every drop. So crack one open and let the great taste roll in. Kona Big Wave, liquid aloha. Copyright 2025 Kona Brewing Co., St. Louis, Missouri. Mahalo for enjoying responsibly.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to FinTech Insider Insights. I'm David Brear, Group CEO here at 11FS. Today, we're joined by somebody who not only knows a lot about the biggest regulatory decisions in the industry, but somebody who has been playing a huge part in shaping the next stage of FinTech advancement over the years. Head of Innovation at the FCA, Colin Payne. For those who might not be familiar with the FCA or the Financial Conduct Authority, it's one of the UK financial regulators, kind of like the SEC in the US, making sure that the financial markets run fairly and safely. With over 25 years of finance and technology experience, including roles at PwC, Seren, HSBC, Lloyds, and Apple, it's fair to say that Colin is really deep into fintech payments and digital transformation. Colin, how's it going? It's really great to see you. I mean, last time we were chatting face-to-face was, I think it was a hotel in Saudi, wasn't it?
Like, you're way back when. Right. Yeah, so, back in Riyadh.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does. Yeah, it's nice to see you, David. Really good to be here.
Really good to see you. I mean, we'll get going with all of your background and everything there and chat through a little bit of your career. But for anybody who doesn't know, what's the elevator pitch for Head of Innovation at the FCA? It sounds like a pretty cool job title, and I've seen you doing all sorts of stuff since you joined, but what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, I mean, working at a regulator and pushing innovation as an agenda is an amazing job. We get to work with the government. We get to set agendas. We get to push the industry and work with industry. It's a fantastic open opportunity for anyone. So I jumped at it.
Well, we'll get into more detail a little bit about that. And like you say, there's so much things happening at the moment. But maybe if we start, I don't want this to feel like it's an interview too much of your CV, but talk me through it, because you've had some pretty amazing roles. You've worked with some pretty amazing people, from big banks to gigantic technology companies. So how'd you get here?
It's a really checkered career. I did start originally in the city. I was in a merchant bank. So I got a very early taste of city work. And I was a trader. So I traded Eurobonds, some exotic warrants, that kind of stuff. But I was always into technology. So I wasn't a classic city guy. I started playing around with code. This is late 80s, trying to figure out the market and use a bit of algorithmic tech to try and second guess the market. And it worked. I did some pretty good work there, but I wasn't really, I felt a bit like a fish out of water in that role. And I was more interested in the tech, actually, more interested in the innovation. So I started working elsewhere, and a series of events led me to Apple. Apple was at the time bankrupt. I think it was 11 cents a share. Right. Steve was coming back. I was invited to one of the Apple events in France, and I met him. And he showed me this box, which had this plastic computer in it. It was a prototype of the iMac. I'd never seen anything like it. And he was like, what would you do with this? I thought about it, and I gave him some sort of spiel about launching it into the education world. It was really just what came to mind. But he loved the idea, so we worked together on stuff.
That went rather well as well, right? Because as a strategy for that whole product line, that was totally. Pretty instrumental in terms of the direction. Right?
Totally. I mean, to be honest, because I was detached from maybe the reality of what people normally would do, the baggage that comes with a standard marketing strategy, I just thought, what would you do? Okay, get a load of students, give them a computer, give them some coffee next to them, let them engage with it. Yeah. The campus, of course, the first campus I launched it on was in West London. It was called TVU. The head of facilities hated the idea. It was like, don't mix liquids and computers. I was like, well, what could possibly go wrong? Anyway, we did it anyway. And I remember seeing this bank of computers, these beautiful blue translucent things. It was like another world. And the students came in. And this was the first year of a new college, which I was working on. And of course, they saw this opportunity to sit with their computers, log in, start to work, create stuff. It was a creative arts college, digital, one of the first. It flew, you can imagine. And the reputation just ballooned within months. It was like, you've got to come to this college. So that's kind of what I cut my teeth on. It's customer experience. I didn't realize it was called that, but I just felt fairly natural in thinking about that. So, I worked there for quite a while. I did some really interesting work there, and was working on some of the platform stuff. You know, what's become what we all use today on our phones. But of course, I couldn't have imagined the future. But anyway, I loved the idea of continuing to innovate. So I moved into more of a consulting role, and then I started working on some really interesting work. I was at Macy's. I don't really know. I was at Macy's for a little while.
I didn't know. Do you know what? I didn't know that until I did a little bit of a LinkedIn stalking on you, and then I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting role.
Yeah.
But I guess, like you say, when you're talking about high volumes of traffic of, you know, whether that's physical or whether it's digital, then planning those things out and the experiences, the things that you engage with, must be very similar.
Completely that. I mean, you know yourself that if you kind of come to any digital interface, you want that experience to be resonant with you. So whether it's on Herald Square, you know, and that I was working on the flagship at Herald Square, how do I turn that into something, you know, wow.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit tired by then. This was kind of in the 2004-5 era. A little bit tired. Went in and we came up with this kind of omni-channel approach, online, offline, bringing it together. Now everyone does that now, but it was pretty early days then. So that's what kind of really, I suppose, keeps me buzzing. It's just trying to be on that cutting edge, but not on the bleeding edge, but on the cutting edge. And I think I've always wanted to do that. But with those, I
was going to say that's quite an interesting sort of attention to detail, though, isn't it? So whether it's a friend of mine's one of the curators at the Tate, and she says similar. It's like, actually, you know, none of these wow moments happen by accident.
No.
You've got to, you sort of orchestrate these things and the drama around them and everything that goes with that. But I guess that sort of, you know, sticking with Apple for a second, like synonymous with Steve Jobs, right? Like the big reveals, the one more thing.
Exactly.
You know, none of that happens by accident.
No, and what I think what people forget is that he was a master of, first of all, developing the kit. I mean, he built the kit with Steve Wozniak. You know, mid-70s, they were creating it from nothing. And then when that continued, and he had this passion for pushing that boundary, for creating the theatre, but it always had to have a user experience embedded there all the time. It has to be what the user needed and wanted. And there would be absolute attention to every detail. I mean, absolute obsession. And that's what you sometimes need. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you sort of talk about the creative process being sort of very, creative, very sort of laid back. But actually there needs to be some hard edges to that to make it commerl as well, doesn't it?
I've always kind of been a stickler for actually quite serious project management, some boundaries, you know, real guidelines for you to progress quickly. Because I think creativity is one thing, and I think you've said yourself, you know, there's billion-dollar ideas everywhere, right? Okay, executing on that is a very, very different concept. And that kind of brought me back to banking, I guess, because the combination of creativity and execution in a field like regulated banking, it's almost the biggest challenge.
Sure.
Almost the biggest challenge.
It's a hard balance, isn't it? Jason, one of the founders, you know Jason.
Yeah.
So he often says it's like people love a plan that basically says, like, you know, where the magic happens. And it's like the reality of those moments are quite different, aren't they? Where but bringing people together and having positive discussions around change is often the beginning of that spark, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, I think there is a certain amount of magic, and I can't define what that is, because you know when it happens, because you're in there, and it's, you know, I'm a musician. So for me, it's like music. Music is a very formulaic. When you unpack it all, it's mathematical. But crikey, when you sit and listen to some jazz, or when you listen to your favorite artist, for me, Bowie, if I were to go into that magical environment for a while, it transcends everything. And you know when that happens in a project as well, it's like, wow, that's special.
Yeah. The sort of flow of jamming, that's intoxicating, isn't it, when that happens? And I feel like that's almost sort of a cultural movement at that point, because you're sort of part of something. The sum of all the parts are bigger than the impact, aren't they? It's why small teams can do amazing things, isn't it?
Exactly. I think having that nimbleness, but also, if you're an expert at it, if you've got that real, I think that craft, the work that we do, there's an amount of years that you put in to get the crafting of what you do. And then you can orchestrate, then you can play jazz then.
Yeah. It's a funny one. I love that you were like, I'm working at Apple. This is going great. Let's go fix banking for a bit. Like so. But there is something about financial, and I've similar actually financial services. I feel like is such a utility to people that actually it's for the good of everybody. And and I know that makes it sound so highfalutin of like, great, erect the statue. And I don't mean it like that. I mean, it's like, it feels like it should be so much simpler than it's made out to be.
Yeah. I think it's just the lifeblood of everything. I mean, that's the thing. We live in a world where without good banking, I can't imagine going back 20 years and using it like we used to. And it still surprises me that people had to discover the capabilities that digital would offer. But for me, it's just so natural. And approaching it's a difficult subject. It's difficult to get it because it's a utility for everybody. Getting a personality to what your brand is doing as a bank, that's pretty tough.
Yeah, it is. And having cut through in a, it's not a commodity in the sense of it being, baking powder or washing powder or whatever, but actually how you bring personality to that is really important. Isn't it?
Without it being a kind of empty marketing statement.
But you've worked across different consultancies as well. That's an amazing accelerated experience for learning as well, isn't it? I found people don't really realize working in one organization is fantastic, but working in 50 at the same time is somewhat of an interesting task, isn't it?
I mean, it was a baptism by fire for me. I hadn't worked in a consultancy. I hadn't gone through that route. So I dropped in, you mentioned Seren. I think I'd been an independent consultant for maybe a decade. And it was only when I joined Seren, which then became EY Seren, that I really understood that power. And that was actually the first time I was in Riyadh. So talking of Riyadh, I lived there 10 years ago in a very different Riyadh. But I built the first customer experience lab for Riyadh Bank with Seren. And it was a remarkable experience. 6 months, sort of virgin territory, everyone learning as we went along. I was bringing team members out there, and it was not the easiest place in the world to live. I insisted not living on a sort of campus. I wanted to live in a flat in Riyadh in order to actually become more understanding of the culture. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's hard to build something for that environment if you're not part of that environment, is it? To really understand it. But the point there about actually every organization really trying to do similar things, but the personality of those organizations kind of coming out. That must have been quite an interesting time from a regulatory change perspective as well, because, it's one thing, building something in the UK or one thing, but actually, it does take the regulators' advancements to make those things happen. Like the SAMA back then would have been a very different beast, I guess.
Yeah, entirely. I think it was actually back then, it was more the banks pushing forward. So it was kind of ground bottom up, which was exciting. But when I then went back last year and saw you, I was working for SAMA. And working for them and having that power of direction. Again, it's back to the obsession. It's an absolute obsession with delivering. And they had very clear objectives. And the 2030 vision was extraordinarily punchy. And so we were doing that. I was on a plane absorbing all the rules and regulations. I had a 550-page document on faster payments. And I had to build it in 6 weeks and ship the code.
Amazing.
So back to your point about execution, that was, we turned their regulations into rule sets and code. And the code was shipped to the banks and we implemented it. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. So the change and the approach, really lots to learn from there.
Yeah, it's exciting. That's amazing. And I guess that sort of brings us to now, and actually, as you say, doing that out in Riyadh, changing the environment there. I guess that brings us to today with the role that you've got with the FCA. What first attracted you? I feel like this is a dating conversation. What first attracted you to the FCA? What was it that sort of drew you to this opportunity?
Well, it's interesting because about maybe 2-3 years ago now, I did a hackathon with them. So I was working and I applied to do a hack. It was one of their sprints. And I rocked up, and it must have been a month after OpenAI launched ChatGPT first version. And I rocked up in Endeavour Square as a invited hackathon attendee. And I had the most incredible couple of days experience with them. I thought this team is amazing. They didn't really understand some of what I was bringing. because actually it was extremely new.
Yeah.
We did come up with this great idea about using AI as an agent. Funnily enough, I spun up actually a video, because I'd done some work on video interpretations for another company, and I had this great code that I could spin up video. So I spun up a video regulator, someone who would guide you through the handbook. And I used it the next day, the second day, and I programmed it. It was live. No one believed it. And to this day, I think some people are like, you got an actor in for that, right? But that was what introduced me to what the FCA was doing. I hadn't really spent a lot of time with them before that. And it stuck with me. So last year, I'd finished with SAMO and I came back to the UK. And I was approached, someone mentioned this to me. So I thought, this is great. It's a brilliant team, absolutely superb team. And I want to find out more. And as I went through the process, it was a long, long process. I think 5-6 months, multiple layers of the process.
Yeah.
I got more and more hooked, more and more interested. It just seemed like a brilliant opportunity.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's great, and it's great to have you back in the UK as well. Thanks. And it seems like momentum's sort of really building around the things that you're doing. You know, and I don't think it's just because I know you and I've sort of seen these things happening, but there seems to be change popping up across the industry. I know I've been quite vocal of sort of saying, you know, we were kind of kings of the world and things sort of pulled back a little bit, but it kind of feels like we're building that momentum back up now to not just for the sake of being seen as a global innovator and blah, 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 but to create the environment for real innovation to happen here. So, you know, innovation in its sense in banking is often sort of given a bit of a veneer, isn't it? But the things that are happening now feel, you know, beyond skin deep, don't they? They're infrastructural, they're governmental, they're actually, you know, deep in the regulations now. It's not just fun things, it's like things that fundamentally have impact, which is perfect, isn't it? You know?
I think so. I mean, and that's a big change. I mean, I dropped into the FCA, I think I started middle of December. And on the 24th of December, we had a letter from the Prime Minister. Can we come up with 5 growth ideas for the next year?
On the 24th of December?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That,
Christmas present.
Yeah, exactly. Just think that while you're wrapping presents.
Yeah. And deliver it by the 16th of January, which was the deadline.
Yeah.
So my plans changed a little bit for Christmas, and we delivered 50 ideas.
Wow.
Which we're sticking to. And that's I mean, for our point of view, I think as the FCA, it's stepping up to that plate. Growth is the agenda. You know, we know the country economically requires growth. We know financial services is critical, and we know innovation is at the heart of it. So you would have seen kind of steps along that path, which led to a strategy. You know, there was a publication of the FCA strategy, really clear, innovation and growth right at the center. Every single page has innovation on it. So I think that laid the foundation. That was the intent. Yeah. It's like, okay, here we go. And then it's kind of up to us to then deliver on that and to work with the industry, because it's not something we can do on our own at all. It's impossible. We can lay lots of foundations, as we did for open banking, as we did for fintech. Lots of stuff regulation can do to sweep away the barriers to entry and help, but really it's engagement.
And how much, I guess, you know, talking through just now your previous roles and all the things you've done before, I mean, you know, having worked in banking and having, you know, maybe seen some of the limitations of within organizations you're at, or even back to, you know, the Apple days of the clarity of communication and everything, like how much of what you've done in your past sort of makes you, you know, so qualified to do this now?
It's a good question. Sometimes I simply don't know. I trust that the FCA chose me for a reason.
I wasn't questioning their selection process. It was more. It feels like a, you know, crescendo. It feels like all of this has been building.
I'm being slightly sort of tongue in cheek. I think having been through the real transformation age, and I've worked for the incumbent banks, some of the global ones, as you mentioned. I've worked for the challengers, the neos, the fintechs. I've done work across the spectrum, but also, you know, I was back in a merchant bank in the 80s coding. So I kind of have this legacy, which gives me a little bit of credibility in those decisions that I make. But what I have picked up is there's a lot of similarity along those path stops, and I bring that with me. I bring the best of what I've learned along the way, and that is about clarity of message. It is about reaching out and engaging. It's about being authentic. It's about delivery. There's no point in us producing paper after paper after paper. What it is thinking smart, Speaking to other regulators around the world, I chair GFIN. It's 96 global regulators that I chair. We think about innovation every day, and we try to learn from each other. We try to help each other. We try to promote stuff because, as you say, this is a society issue. Yeah. Yes, the UK's got to grow, so let's generate growth. How do we generate growth? It's no different to a product, really. The UK is a product, financial services. The regulation supports that. How do we drive forward? Yeah. And that's the question we ask ourselves. So I bring lots of lessons, really. And I think some of the lessons which balance what I've worked on in the incumbents, I learned a lot of the blockers that were there through hard experience. And when you take an example, I'll give you just one example, PSD2 and open banking, trying to transform banks to approach open banking in a way that's going to be beneficial. There's so many lessons we learned along that route, and so many swift entrants to the market came in and disrupted. So let's learn from that as well. It's bring the lessons and be open and humble, and then work on them.
How much do you find, and speaking out loud now of sort of my experience a little bit, is like having worked in a big bank for 6 years, going and speaking to people in banks now, just being a bit empathetic, you know, like actually to your point, they feel that you've been in their shoes. Therefore, you're not coming at it from purely are you dumb and you can't do this? Or like, why have you not thought of this? It's like, we get how hard it is, but you're there to kind of create that change. That's right. That's quite a disarming thing, isn't it? Particularly in very senior management.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've obviously got good networks. We've built that over the years as well. So there's a trust element in this as well. I'm also an open person. I'm transparent. I'm not going to create those kind of walls that sometimes exist between different organizations. We're innovators, so we're working together with the ecosystem. So for me, if I can't help the ecosystem thrive, then I'm not doing my job. Simple as that. Yeah. So whatever I need to do that, I will do my very best.
That's amazing. It's a collaboration in that sense, isn't it?
Totally is.
It's going from white papers and publications to a dialogue. In a real sense. Right?
It is. It's also, I think, to an extent, there's a perception of parent and child relationship in regulation. That's been there for some time, and it's not our intent to be that. I think the intention is to be partnering. We start to talk, especially in innovation and technology, we're starting to talk about tech positivity as a principle, and that doesn't obviously mean just endorsing specific technologies or opening the door to everything. It's responsible. There's responsibility and sustainable innovation, but it does mean being positive with it and moving into it, leaning into it. I think that's important for us to do.
I mean, that's interesting as well, because obviously you've seen different regulators, not just different banks and different financial services providers, but different regulators all around the world sort of operating in different ways. Because as you say, some are, and the US regulatory system, completely different from here. And to your point, the sort of supervisory structuring and, black and white book versus retrospective view, it's different everywhere, isn't it? But fundamentally, it's sort of intent. What's the intent there? And actually building out systems that are collaborating for the better of the business, better the environment, better for the customer. That's where good things happen, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, you're focused on the consumer need, protecting the consumer. You don't want that harm to happen. And we are extraordinarily protective. It's interesting. I sit sometimes with fintechs, and actually, it can be any firm that we work with or the wider ecosystem. And we will discuss how best innovation can play that part. Because in my opinion, authorization and supervision, the areas of the business have an extraordinarily tough and important job to control the perimeter and to protect that perimeter. And they've done an amazing job doing it. As growth is now focused on, you still have to do that job. It's still maybe more difficult. So actually what we've done in innovation is become closer to our friends in authorizations and in supervision. And the panels that I convene for innovation to discuss innovative firms include all of those guys on it. And it's really important they're there because they give me the perspective that I won't have. I mean, I've got blind spots like everyone, and I need that help. And I think it's incredibly valuable.
Very good. All right. Well, lots of interesting backgrounds and lots of, again, I didn't want to make this sound like an interview process that we were going through. You've definitely got the job. It's awesome and you're doing a really good job. But what we're going to do in the second part of this story is come back and give a bit more of an overview of what the steps are that the FCA is taking. That'll come right after the break.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's vanta.com/insider.
All right, folks, welcome back to FinTech Insider, where we're chatting with Colin Payne, who is the head of innovation at the FCA. In the first half, we explored Colin's career journey and got into some pretty deep territory of the things that he'd done and the places that he'd been. Super interesting background, I have to say. And with that in mind, what we're going to do is start a little bit more about really where you think the industry's heading. I mean, even in prep for this show with the audio engineers for FinTech Insider, we were talking about use cases for ChatGPT. So, like, AI is on the tongue of everybody right now. Earlier on in the year, the FCA made pretty big waves with the announcements of the supercharged AI sandbox. Talk to me a little bit more about what that is, because that's it's pretty market defining. I wouldn't say even leading. It's a very different place to go to, particularly with the partnerships that have been struck. So tell me more.
Okay. I mean, track it back to the AI Lab, because that's the origin of this. The AI Lab was launched in January. We decided to go about things very differently. I mean, really rewrite the rulebook. So you're right, it's defining. The team structured a lab to be able to spotlight firms, to understand the use cases. So to your point, the first thing we want to do is ask a question. What's going on? Where's the gap? Classic gap analysis. And we did a spotlight on the industry, or the widest spotlight we could, and we asked for applications. We had a lot of applications, which we then selected what we believe were very instructive use cases. Now, obviously, the FCA doesn't endorse specific firms. That isn't our job to do that. But we can highlight great practice and allow ourselves to be a convener of some of those really good use cases. So that's how we learned. So we learned what's going on in the market in January. Immediately after that, we ran a sprint, a classic tech sprint. A classic with a twist. So this was the AI sprint, and we invited our policy colleagues with us. Again, this is a new thing. So imagine bringing policy into the kind of work that innovation do. And it was a joint sprint, policy and innovation. It was phenomenal. I think we've had the biggest attendance of any sprint, 400 plus people.
Wow.
Endeavour Square, our theatre there is very good. It holds 250.
Yep.
So we had 2 or 3 breakout rooms, but we had those convened brains in that one space. And we asked the challenging questions, to your point, actually what the future is. What do we need to do as a regulator to convene that future? What can we help with? And we got some brilliant feedback. And those sprint outcomes are always published by us, so they're always transparent. So they were published shortly afterwards. The amazing thing about it was the speed of policy feedback. So to be able to ensure there's a loop back into policy, to be able to give us the kind of clarity that we need to start talking to the firms more generally about, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Game-changing. We then replicated that with advice, guidance, boundary review. And that led to a 2-month turnaround on consultation. Yeah. And now we've got targeted support. Yeah. I mean, unprecedented speed.
I mean, and that is a topic. I mean, I think we could speak for about 7 hours on that gap, the advice guidance side of things, and actually what that means from a regulatory perspective. And because that's actually quite minutiae detail, isn't it? And actually I think I spent about 18 months of my life when I was at Lloyd's kind of looking at that. It's a difficult thing when you are dealing with predictive known end outcomes for customers, which is what obviously regulators are like, consistency and but doing that in the AI space is quite a challenge, isn't it?
Exactly. You're moving to a deterministic sort of system.
Yeah. It's not
a black box.
Exactly. It's not just a decision tree where, you always end up at A or whatever.
No. It's tough and it's variable. And it can come with the same inputs and different outputs.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to deal with at the moment. But testing it and making sure we had relevant brains who could give us that kind of information, sprint through those ideas, give some sort of basic guidance. That was the space we wanted to get to on the sprint, and it was awesome. It was also we added to that with an input zone, so an online hybrid zone, which then gave us more and more power of the voice of our customers, really the wider ecosystem. And what that led to was a really clear analysis of what we needed to focus on. And the methodology for focusing on it was the supercharged sandbox. So we felt that we can have choices of publishing papers. We can give guidance, we can do many, many things. But in innovation, we love to experiment. We want to get our hands dirty. So let's supercharge our digital sandbox, which has been existing for 2-3 years already. So it's been well used already. It's been very successful, actually, but it wasn't really fit for the purpose of AI.
Sure.
So what do? You go and speak to some people, and you go and speak to some partners. And that was what led me to speak to NVIDIA and ask them to consider that kind of partnership support for what we're trying to create. They heard the story, like we've just explained. They were all in straight away. It took them less than 10 seconds. And we said, fine, let's do it. Let's get something spun up. And they said, why don't we announce something in Tech Week? Let's make it something that everyone is interested in.
Yeah.
Because part of it is ensuring the ecosystem knows about it as well. And I think that's important. I mean, it may be marketing, but it's important PR marketing for the idea.
100%. Yeah.
Critical.
I mean, how do you go about making that type of thing happen? Because to your point, it's not coalescing people, agreeing around ideas, with you, all the way through to a partnership with somebody like NVIDIA to put that in place. Like that's something that hasn't really happened before. That must have been quite difficult, wasn't it?
I didn't find it difficult because, again, it's probably the principles that I explained that I've had before. I go into something without the baggage.
Sure.
So I don't really, my principle is we can do it.
Sure.
That's where I start. There's no reason not to do it.
Sure.
Let's just clear the
Why
blockers.
Not? Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
So I went in naively. And we had honest conversations about it. And there was a joint feeling of importance around the idea. And we got government backing as well, which always helps. So very quickly, we had Number 10 involved. And of course, that announcement by the Prime Minister and Jensen, having them on stage supporting what you're doing is critical for the UK, for us, and for all the firms that we're going to work with. It gave us that kind of lift. So I think anything's achievable.
Yeah.
I won't accept that it isn't, and we had a deadline, so we did it.
Just because it hasn't been done, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's the response since then? Because obviously there was a huge sort of swell of interest and activity and everything that sort of came from that. And it seems to not just be again, it's as you say, it isn't just a press release, it's a sustained level of effort. So what's happened since then?
Yeah, so we opened the floodgates. We've had hundreds of inquiries, as you can imagine. And we opened the applications for the cohort formally about 3 weeks ago, something like that. And it's open until the middle of August.
Yep.
So we're now consumed with measuring those applications. And it's about a 200% uplift on our normal application process.
Wow.
So pretty busy. And
have you got a small army of people reading submissions? Because that, I imagine there's some complex stuff in there.
Yeah, there is. We've got a dedicated small army. It's a very, very small army because we're not blessed with hundreds of people, but we have got brilliant young minds who love this stuff. And they're this amazing group of people who are technically capable and have a regulatory mindset. And we also bring in whoever we need to from our wider group, our division, and the wider across the FCA as we need to. But actually, we've been quite specific on what people should apply with. And so it makes the application process a bit more clear.
Yeah.
We're not onerous. It's not like a standard multiple page document. We want to get to the nub of the idea. And then when we're happy with the idea, it goes through a panel. And once they're in, we will close the cohort and then we'll be working with the cohort. But the applications range from systemic global players all the way through some of the great names that we have always worked with, some of the really cool stuff that we know they do, plus some real surprises in there.
Do you know, that's always been something I've been fascinated with the sandboxers, is just how broad the appeal is. You know, like you say, you've got gigantic global banks to, 20 people startups that are doing something super interesting. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we've got some that are 1 or 2 people who are starting. The appeal is, I mean, I think you've got to look at what the sandbox is offering.
Yeah.
Because, it's all very well saying you've got a sandbox. And I've been around the world. I've seen some sandboxes and there's not so much of an environment. Let's put it that way. We've got NVIDIA GPU.
Yeah.
So we've got serious compute. We've got the enterprise systems that NVIDIA have given us, which are phenomenal, as you can imagine. We've built our own dev interfaces with NI1. And, the combination of those gives you a very strong platform just to start.
Yeah.
But then we've added the synthetic data. We've got all the synthetic data sets, which are phenomenal.
I mean, that's always been an issue for any tech sprint, right? Particularly from a regulator across the world, is like, actually, you can develop systems, but unless the data's there to thoroughly test it, then are you seeing real behavior in the way that a customer would, or fraudsters or whatever?
Exactly.
I mean, that must have been quite a big challenge just in itself, getting synthetic data.
Well, that was the first. Well, the hackathon that I mentioned was the first data sprint.
Right.
So I perceived that as a potential option for us in the future.
Yeah.
I saw the value of it. It was brilliant. I'm pleased to say that's just ballooned. So when you talk about fraud, our fraud data set it's phenomenal. We've got 20,000 synthetic people, customers, and 30,000 flags, transaction data coming out of our ears. I mean, you can really do good work with this stuff. But we're moving it now. We've just announced the Smart Data Accelerator as well. So we're moving through open banking, open finance, and already looking at smart data now as our data set, because we think in the future, well, why wouldn't we be experimenting with other regulators? Number one, telcos, for example, they've got fantastic data. We should be sharing some of that, especially for fraud and scams, for example. The opportunities there are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, I guess this is why I'm in it. The opportunity to change people's lives and the macro, and to save the consumer from harm. It's all in front of us. If we embrace the technology, use it properly, and deploy it with firms, it gives them the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Well, and as you say there, I mean, things like GFIN and, fraudsters don't have a tendency to stay in one place. So it's a global problem, a global responsibility at that stage, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that must always be quite an interesting conversation, though, sort of with things like GFIN, where you're, look, we can't agree on what type of plug we all should use, could we? So, like, actually agreeing on regulations are quite a difficult task, isn't it? But sort of stepping back from the things that are happening here to create, networks to catch fraud networks is a very positive step, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, for a long time, we've done lots of multinational work, IOSCO and FSB and others, and they're really valuable. So trying to get frameworks together that are consistent around the world. But as you say, that's really difficult. I mean, try and get... In my case, I have 96 regulators as members.
Wow.
We are...
Register must be a real pain in the butt to take it.
Yeah, exactly. Are you in? But most of them, I mean, are very, very active and brilliant minds. So they're very keen to experiment again. So it goes back to that passion of why we're doing this. There is something difficult about getting a framework together, because it's a huge amount of data over long periods of time, and you have to get precision over that. Something about agility, something about doing those kind of bilateral experiments or trilateral experiments, working with the likes of BIS. There are those bodies that are brilliant at prototyping, getting that code spun up and shipping it.
Yeah.
And then them testing the data.
And then is that where, because obviously, when you've talked about what you're doing with NVIDIA, I mean, there's sandboxes that are sort of regulatory sandboxes. They are, help, their support, their conversations.
Yes.
But this is a technology sandbox, which is a fundamentally different thing, and that's a very different stance for a regulator. Oh, obviously we've seen globally with India Stack and different things and blah, 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 blah. But actually doing that and having the consistency of how to implement those things, it's creating standards in a very different way than just what the rulebook says, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a way of practically testing how it's actually going to come out.
Yeah.
You can do safe, clean experimentation. Personally, I think with AI, The trajectory it's on at the moment, if you continue as it is now, and we can see that there's no reason why it won't, the handling of data is going to be super critical. And we know how financial services data is. We know the quality of it. There's a lot of work to do there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do even with the regulators. We've now created a machine-readable handbook. Fantastic step forward. One of the first in the world. The next stage, obviously, is a step more difficult. There are lots of work we can do with agents. Internally, we're trying to look at all AI options, but we have to do it practically. We have to do these small experiments in safe conditions, because that's really our responsibility to do that, to prove the case.
Yeah. It's an interesting balancing act as somebody who is there for innovation, sort of balancing innovation with risk. Like, how do you? Is that as much an educational process as it is a step change? Because it's not just about, okay, we now do this or we now allow this. It's about getting. It's like I always sort of say. AI right now feels like the equivalent of like giving everybody cars that can go 500 miles an hour. And it's like, well, not everybody's capable of doing that. Probably nobody's capable of doing that. So let's start at 50, shall we? And so, almost like the speed limits being introduced to what is needed to sort of gradually deploy this capability.
Yes, that's a nice analogy. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's a nice analogy. I think from our point of view, we are definitely looking at speed zones. For obvious reasons. I mean, it's and I think the firms want to work with us on that. That's the thing. It's no one is interested in breaking all of these barriers. Then actually don't want to break the sound barrier necessarily. It's about progressing through this and harnessing the tools like it always has done. I mean, there's always been a new tool. There's always been a new technology. Go back 200 years. I mean, this is not entirely new as a model for us. So it's just faster, and it's just more, as you said, the move from probabilistic to deterministic. That's a challenge for everybody on any industry, especially regulated industries.
Well, and you say there's a sort of a good actors wanting to harness it, but obviously there's always fraudsters are always pretty innovative. So staying ahead of that to a certain degree from an industry perspective is important for people to know what to watch out for as well.
It's really important. I mean, internally, we're obviously using technology which is pretty advanced. So bringing the kind of pattern recognition in the system, we've deployed stuff this year that can bring the average pattern recognition from 2.5 years down to months.
Wow.
So it starts to become actually very practical. And it's, as you say, the bad actors versus the good actors. We support RegTech, SupTech, those areas of our industry. We are really focused on trying to help them. We're bringing RegTechs into our digital samples all the time. We want to see what they're trying to do. How can we help them move faster?
Yeah. It's amazing how sometimes simplistic things can solve those problems. Like we found, you can clone people's voices and you can clone people's faces and all of those different things. But, there's a few banks out there who have done, if you're talking to us, it's not us type. And simple things like that, where actually it doesn't always need to be the most blazing technology advancements that solve problems in fraud, is it?
No, that's exactly right. Sometimes it's just an easy solve.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, we've had a position, I guess, in the UK, post, like 2016, 2014, whenever it was all of the changes were kind of happening. And you've seen this from various different angles as being sort of a leader in this space. Probably, I'd say top 3 in the world, for the last 15, 20 years, right? That kind of weighs a little bit on everybody's shoulders, I think, sometimes, in terms of the fantastic debut album, but what does what's that third one looking like?
The difficult album.
Exactly. But it feels like actually everything that's happened lately has really pressed through that. Like it's an amazing thing to see. It's not, I see you as a bit of a lightning rod for a lot of those changes that have happened, but it takes a massive team to make these things structured. Like you say, there's government initiatives, there's things that are happening in the regulator, there's things that are happening in the Bank of England, there's things that are happening in all the banks, there's pressure from it feels like the ecosystem's kind of getting its mojo back now, which is lovely to see, isn't it?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's very kind of you to say as a lightning rod, but
I mean that in a really positive way.
No, I get it. I totally get it.
I mean that in the I can see the things that you've done from the experience that you've had with the banks, and like say that empathy, but also how to structure communication really effectively, which I've always been a fan of. I always know you're very good at that. But it goes beyond that in terms of the communication gets you a belief. It's the implementation that gets you and that's where I'm like, we're doing it now.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Momentum seems with us.
I think you're right. I think that's a really good point as well. I think the execution on the back of what you're saying you do, the intent is there. I'm really lucky in that I have the backing of the ecosystem. I mean, there's no question the response to our when I put a post up about the NVIDIA thing, and the response was amazing. I mean, really, really, genuinely. And from government, I've had nothing but support. In the FCA, it's as I explained, the strategy has been very clear. So not only is it kind of a supportive environment and a clear remit and a mandate for change, working across, of course, I come in and I'm to an extent countercultural. I'm going to come into the FCA and I'm not a traditional risk-based regulator.
Yeah.
Of course I'm not. My job is to innovate. But I'm also learning as well. So learning with your colleagues and learning with the ecosystem, that goes back to the humility, the transparency, authenticity.
Yeah.
I will make mistakes, but they will be in the safe environment with the ecosystem, learning together.
Yeah.
And that gives us the speed. That allows us to move fast because it's about experimenting, learning, fast failure, and moving on.
Yeah. And how much, because, obviously, regulation and technology and all the things, but it feels like with what you've been able to achieve, and actually, I mean, how long have you been in role
7
now?
months, yeah.
7 months. I mean, it feels like so much longer, because actually it feels like you're a bit of a Rosetta Stone. Like, actually, you can traverse big banks and fintechs and tech, and we need to get into the music industry clearly as a finance industry, but being that sort of center point for translating between those different parties and doing it with an element of empathy kind of breeds trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And often the trust of things is what gets you the permission to do the next thing, doesn't it?
I think that's it. And I think there's a certain element of openness as well. It's openness to the experiment.
Yeah.
And as a regulator, I think when I've spoken to innovative regulators, they have that mindset, and it's about a mindset. And of course, it goes back to your point about risk and innovation. These are different cultural mindsets, but they also have a real relationship because there's the risk of not innovating as well, of course. So if you choose not to do that, you're going to be in real existential crisis quite soon. So for us, it's about doing it safely, as I said, doing it responsibly, moving forward, moving fast.
Yeah. You must have, I mean, your mailbox must be inundated with, here's the thing I think the regulator should have done. And, do you know what the one thing you guys should do? Like, opinions are quite interesting, but dealing with that on a, like, say, only been in for months and months, and I mean, it's been a fun job. Like, I'm really pretty fun. I'm pretty envious, I have to say. I feel like from the outside, it feels like you're having fun, which is great.
It's fun and demanding. It's more demanding than I anticipated. I mean, there is layers and layers of learning when you go into something like this. Not least when you're talking to everyone publicly. You need to be a little bit more measured in what you're thinking and saying. And that's something I've learned over the months. But it still gets down to a basic. It still gets down to, if you're going in with the intent of being open and humble and delivering, the delivery arc, we all know what that's like, and we all know we're going to learn together. Yeah,
it's going to be speed bumps. There's going to be problems.
Of course there is. And with the inbound that I do get a lot of inbound. Of course I do, and I try to be as responsive as possible. I try to be as reasonable as possible and as open as possible. And I've been very fortunate actually that I've had I would say on the whole, there hasn't been any of the negativity that you might have expected, and a lot of positivity and support to try and get stuff done because we're doing it together. Yeah, it's kind of like you're just in it together, right?
So what's the next steps then for the sandbox? So you say submissions are sort of piling in now. When does that close?
That closes middle of August.
Yeah.
It'll be sifted. There'll be themes created for the cohorts. The cohorts will start in October. So that's going to be really exciting. It's a 3-month cohort, standard, traditional, vintage cohort model, which will give
I love that though. Like personally, I love the theatre that comes with that because it feels more regimented and a structure and a product and So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it'll give us a good set of answers for what we're doing. The themes emerging are really interesting, as you'd expect. You mentioned some of the ideas would be around agentic, and the advice side is important. So a lot of what we're thinking about is how far can we push AI and to be human on loop. Really interesting stuff is going to come out of this. I know that.
I mean, it changes really. We talk about the fabric of financial services. It feels like the barriers of what product or what type of business or all of those things are melting down when you've got capabilities that can traverse all of those. It's going to be fascinating. Really looking forward to seeing what comes out of it.
Thank you.
I feel like the sort of pitch day structure around it will be a thing of beauty.
Yeah, well, you guys are going to come, I'm sure. I mean, I would hope you're there. And hopefully we get a couple more % on your movement towards
Dial
the fabric.
it up a little bit,
Try,
I don't know, things are moving pretty quickly, but it's amazing to see. But I like amazing job so far in terms of what you're doing. I feel like when we sort of talk about that second, third tough album, you guys are doing a great job on that one. So we'll have to get you back and see what the live show's like.
There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we will never have time to cover on this, but if you start to dial it into smart data, open finance, there are so many opportunities. We're now scratching on the surface of quantum. I mean, crikey, it's an interesting time ahead of us.
That is, I think again, there's a whole show just on the quantum computing sort of dilemma around how that works. But like you say, fraudsters are so able to harness these things before anybody else can do legitimately, aren't they? So it's going to be amazing to see. Well, Colin, thank you so much for joining us. Sadly, that is all the time that we've got today. So big thank you to Colin for joining me and talking a little bit about everything that's happening at the FCA. Colin, where can you find out a little bit more about you?
LinkedIn's great.
Yeah,
LinkedIn's very easy for me.
Add to the pile of DMs that Colin's getting for requests of stuff. As for me, LinkedIn is pretty much where you can find me most of the time. Thank you for listening, everybody. If you like what you heard, follow us on any podcast platform that you've got. Leave us a review. It really helps us make the show better, helps other people find it as well. If you do want to join the conversation, you can find us pretty much on any social media channel. Just search for 11FS or FinTech Insider, or email us on podcasts@11fs.com. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Goodbye.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's VANTA.com/insider.